seems to have no intention of making an oral statement to the House on this. So I think there's an accountability issue here. These are significant issues. We know that we will all be discussing come June, the unplaced children who are coming to our offices and our constituencies. And I think it is appropriate for us to be hearing from the Minister now and to give the Assembly the opportunity to actually engage in some meaningful discussion on the Assembly floor and to question him on his plans. So happy to open it up to other members if they have anything to add or if there is agreement around that correspondence being issued.
I'm in agreement, Chair. To add to what he said.
Yeah. Other contributions? No. David?
I mean, I've no objections to what what you're laying out in terms of asking for that information. I would suggest though that those schools that have not engaged previously, this will likely not, and I speak from knowledge of my own constituency, this should not and will not come as a surprise to them that they have not engaged in the past, and therefore the department is moving to ensure. We have lots of discussion around this committee table at times around how some schools are doing a lot of the heavy lifting and other schools, I know we focus on grammar schools, but it's not just grammar schools, I have to say, aren't engaging and trying to do their part in that regard. So I think this is about bringing a bit of fairness as well, and that making sure that all of our schools are engaging appropriately. If they have arguments to make as to why they can't or shouldn't, that's one thing, but I think that all of our schools should be assisting in that regard.
Well, thank you for that, David. And I think for me the issues are the clarity just around exactly what the standing of this communication is, so that the system as a whole is clear on the next steps. But Michelle, you're going to go.
I just thought it was worthwhile repeating, I guess, in terms of this. And everything you said, Nick, I agree with. But for the schools maybe who haven't come forward, there's always been that concern about the resource that they're going to have to be able to implement this. I think you'll find most schools are focused on the kids and delivering for kids and don't want to take on something that they feel they're going to fail the children with. So I just think it's important to have that context included in any commentary around this. Could I ask as well, just the Minister not coming to give us an oral statement, which I think is disrespectful, if nothing else. Is he coming to the committee anytime soon? Is he going to come speak to us? Or we have him scheduled in? I wasn't sure just when that was happening.
We are in an engagement, so the clerk can speak to that. We have put the request to the department for a date, but I don't think a date has been confirmed. Yeah.
At least he could come and talk to us then. He won't talk to the whole assembly.
I'll go back about that. Actually, we haven't recently.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to emphasise that we are definitely anticipating an engagement after Easter recess with the Minister and to get that scheduled in as soon as we can. Okay, well look, we'll move on then, as I think we have agreement on that proposal. So then item 3 is declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations that they wish to make in terms of any items on the agenda today? No. Again, if that changes, do indicate. Item 4 is matters arising. There are a few bits of correspondence coming in. Hopefully we can deal with them fairly quickly. So I'd refer members to the correspondence from the EA at page 11, which is a briefing paper on the enhanced support model for children with a statement of special educational needs. Now, we obviously had a fair bit of discussion around this with the EA and department last week, and there's obviously been a lot of media interest in the subject in the week following. So I mean, I'll just set out, I think it's clear, one thing I would say across this committee, that all members are agreed that the current system we have doesn't consistently deliver good outcomes for children, but that there are undoubtedly huge issues around trust and confidence in terms of the relationship between parents and the EA in particular. And I would say what's set out in the paper about early identification of need, multidisciplinary support, school-led decision-making, tailored support based on the needs of the child, those all sound like things that we can get behind. But I think it did come out very clearly, framing this in the context of budget sustainability has not helped it land well with parents in terms of confidence. So I really would just want to comment at this stage. I think that public engagement, I think the EA really needs to be in the business now of engaging with parents and engaging in really meaningful consultation around what this means. And I would like to propose we do get clarity. Are they going to actually go out to full public consultation on this? Because I think parents are actually really looking for an opportunity to make their views known, but also to hear from the EA to really help understand what they are proposing. And I also note that there is quite an extensive sort of pilot programme being proposed in terms of how this will be rolled out. and I would like to get some information about how are they going to actually measure the success of that. So what will they say a successful provision of a new model of support looks like, so that we can understand what the end goal is. So those would be my ideas. So Deputy Chair.
I mean, Chair, I'm beginning to think that a lot of the things we see in some of these papers are just buzzwords. You know, early identification. You know, we had the example of Aurelia that Rachel Hogan was champion, who was known about from she was a baby. You know, her condition was known, that provision would have to be made right through her whole educational career, and it wasn't done. And imagine in a case as obvious as that can't be done, how much more difficult is it for children and for parents where the diagnosis isn't as clear. You know, if we're going to talk about early intervention and early identification, you know, that needs to be done strategically. I mean, there needs to be a plan. Everything just seems to be ad hoc. Multidisciplinary support is another issue. I mean, it just seems to be chaotic. You know, I don't know how many times the name has been changed in terms of, you know, multidisciplinary teams went to local integrated teams and local impact teams, and somebody told me the name's changing again. I can't even remember what the acronym now is, but you know, we're out speaking to practitioners on the ground, principals, teachers, parents, people working in the allied health professionals, and so on, and they're just totally frustrated and exasperated by the fact that there doesn't seem to be any clear strategy or clear plans there on how the system is supposed to look, and then on how it's supposed to operate. You know, and there's that much change coming. There are so many consultations being sent around to schools and so on. It just seems to me like we're in a complete state of chaos. And one begins to wonder, is that deliberate or not? Because certainly the ones who are suffering the most in all of this are the children who most need the support, and their parents as a result of that, you know.
Sincerely hope it's not a deliberate strategy, and I would hope that any officials presenting to us could reassure us that's not the case. Cathy?
Yeah, just briefly, and just to follow on from what Pat says, and I suppose for me it was the level of fear that escalated out of that. I think it was complete and total disrespect actually for our school sector that this just landed in social media without any explanation on a Thursday evening. And the fear that then ensued amongst classroom assistants and parents was just, I just think, disgraceful. And the focus should always be on those who need the support, getting the support that they need. There was no consultation, as far as I can see, done with schools, done with parents, done with anybody. And the question still remains as to how, it doesn't explain how this provision is going to change and how it's going to be impacted. Of course, there's bits of it that are welcome, the upskilling of our classroom assistants, but then it doesn't mention anywhere in addressing the inequalities that exist within our classroom assistants as well, and that kind of tiered approach to it. So there's an awful lot of questions around all of this, and I'll just reiterate again, I just think it was total disrespect from the EA on how this was just dropped out there.
It does highlight just how important getting the comms right. I think when trust is at a low ebb, the comms are really important. Danny, you want to?
Yeah, it goes back to our last 2 weeks of evidence that we took. We didn't get a clear answer. Well, I certainly didn't when I was questioning, particularly around the one-to-one support. It was as clear as mud, and then when that drops like that, it just adds to it. And look, I am on record saying I don't trust the minister and the team in the direction they're going. It hasn't changed. I don't want not to trust them. I want to work together with everyone, but it's every action that happens seems to make this all that wee bit worse, and I don't think it's good enough.
David? Yeah.
I mean, Ger, I would all I would say is in relation to this that I feel that Sinn Féin complaining about the fear that has been understandable anxiety that any change causes in a system. But Sinn Féin complaining about fear in the system is a bit like an arsonist complaining about a fire. I mean, there has been a deliberate political strategy in the last week or two to whip up fear around this, to whip up the idea that the minister is coming to take everyone's one-to-one support, which we know is not true. But what we need to be doing is looking at what system will serve the children better. That should be a child-centred approach, and we should look at any model that we believe will deliver a better system for our children. Not simply fight for the status quo because we can make politics out of that. And I feel personally that that's what's been happening.
Right, Chair, can I just come back to
just briefly, and then we'll
because I'll go back and forth.
move on.
Not whipping up tension. It's not my fault when I ask the question and the senior official in front of me can't answer it. That's the problem right there. So parents don't trust them because they have to fight so hard to get that one-to-one support. You have to deal with placements in all of this as well. Some of it is made by their own mistakes and their firefighting. That's the EA, not the parents. Sinn Féin isn't whipping up anything. We're laying out what we're hearing on the ground, what we're hearing from school leaders, but more importantly, what we're hearing from parents and children. Because this is the one thing that's being missed time and time again by officials, where it's DE, health, EA, it doesn't matter. They are not talking about how you get a child from the bedroom to the bathroom to the kitchen, from the kitchen to the car to the front door of the school. That's the key that they're missing, and they don't get it, and it's not coming across.
The concern, Chair, is the concerns are valid. I'm not saying that, but I think we should be trying to inform and speak into the debate rather than in what I perceive to be whipping it up. I understand the question you were asking last week, and I feel, to be honest, Danny, that it was a question that required a nuanced answer. It wasn't. You were asking for a guarantee that nobody would lose their one-to-one support. That what they tried to do was give nuance to the answer. They weren't going to give it a straight yes or no, but they were telling you why they can't answer that question straight in the here and now. And sometimes I think that, I mean, we can all play politics around these things, but sometimes officials have other considerations, and they're here to inform us. They're not here to give us quick one-word answers.
So I think, Cathy, you'd ask to come in with a very brief comment, and then I think unless there's any other
I just want to come back on that comment
close.
around whipping up fear. David, the EA whipped up the fear because my phone went bonkers whenever people seen that, and I couldn't answer their questions. I can't speak for the EA because I don't trust what they're saying, and I think it's a very, very fair and very, very valid question for a parent to ask: are they guaranteed their one-to-one support? That support that they have fought tooth and nail for. You know yourself, speaking to parents, that they have to fight every step of the way, and they have fought for it, and they don't want to lose it, and it's still unclear whether they will lose it or not. So I don't think that's whipping up fear. Those people coming to us and me not being able to answer them hand on heart, that's the fear, and that's where the fear ensues.
Okay, well, look, if I can maybe draw a line on this, I think where the committee is, I see it does agree, is that the current system is not consistently delivering good outcomes for children. So I think it is appropriate that we should retain an open mind in terms of the best approach to deliver good outcomes for children. But I think when trust is at such a low ebb, I think it really does fall to the EA to set out how they're going to try and recover this ground and engage positively with parents around their plans, because I think my sense from parents that I'm speaking to is that they want to understand what is actually being proposed, and they don't currently, and they want the opportunity to provide feedback and have that engagement. So, I mean, we have the officials here today. We can ask them that question around what they will do around the public engagement piece of this, because it is clearly causing great anxiety for parents at the moment. And as we work through our recommendations from our inquiry, I think the comms around how you deliver reform are sometimes as important as what you're actually doing, because if you create panic, you've lost before you even start. Deputy Chair.
And just on that last point you made there, Chair, I mean, we've had discussions about trying to find a better way to deal with the sort of exponential rise in the number of children with SEN, and is it always the best response to have a one-on-one? And plenty of experts and practitioners are saying that they're not sure that is the best way, that there are other ways. But see, instead of bouncing that on parents and teachers and so on, there needs to be a proper discussion around it. And the difficulty here is this minister is trying to rush all sorts of stuff through within a very short time, and that's what's creating the chaos, even in terms of the curriculum reform. I mean, there was an inspector from the south, and I may have said this here before, who, when they were changing their curriculum in the south, were advised to take 7 to 11 years to do that. He said they tried to do it in 5 and made a complete mess of it, and this minister's trying to get it through in less than a year. I mean, that's just absolutely crazy, and that's what's creating the chaos. I mean, if we're going to have a discussion about curriculum reform, I'm sure everybody's happy to engage in. If we're going to talk about a new model for dealing with special needs, I think everybody's up for that discussion too, and we can have a rational discussion, and we can have differences of opinion, and we can come to agreement as well. But when everything is coming thick and fast, and there's a multitude of issues, you know, that's what's creating problems, I think, and that's the feedback that we're genuinely getting from the sector.
Okay, well look, we'll draw a line at that stage. As I say, we have the officials here. I don't think we'll be able to spend, because the statutory rule around the draft SEN regulation should keep us well enough occupied, I think, with those officials today, but we can potentially raise some of these concerns with them when they are in. I would just add to all of the commentary, if we're worried about rushing things through, you know, losing 2 years of a mandate because, you know, we collapse this place does not help us in terms of make good policy in a way that can actually be delivered in a time scale that is deliverable and that the system can handle. Okay, members, so page 22 then, still in matters arising, we have correspondence from the Department of Education, and it's in relation to our ongoing work on the SEN inquiry, and it indicates the department is seeking to reschedule briefings in relation to SEN pending the outcome of a stocktake review currently being taken on all the SEN reform projects that are funded through the Public Sector Transformation Fund. I'll just get my frustration out of the way. First of all, we had quite a laborious process to get the department to the table for this inquiry, so I think to then be having things kicked further down the road is frustrating. That said, and I'm happy to hear members' views, I don't think it would be appropriate for us to close our inquiry until we've actually heard all the evidence we requested from the department, as I don't want our report to be out of date by the time it's written, because if they're saying they are actually revising what they're doing with these transformation projects, then we need to know that. And the whole purpose of the inquiry was to look at how the transformation agenda actually married up with operational delivery. So I would suggest we do still need to hear these briefings, but I would be suggesting we write and encourage those to be delivered for us as quickly as they possibly can, and of course, like the initial report writing in terms of getting the draft ready pending final recommendations can be underway while we wait. That would be my position on it, but happy to hear other views if there's anybody who has a contrary view. Michelle?
I don't have a contrary view, but I do want to just comment on this. I agree with you, this has been a difficult process in terms of getting the department to engage. I think there's something to be welcomed in the sense that this reflects a lot of the questions that we've certainly been asking of the department when it comes to this transformation money, that it felt like it was being spread too thin, that there wasn't the right focus, and where it felt like the focus needed to be on delivering to kids in classrooms. So why are you not supporting the lit teams to succeed? That was always a continuous question. Why are there so many pilots? Pilots during a moment of crisis felt like it's such a waste of money. So I think seeing that there's going to be some focus brought to this is encouraging to hear. I welcome that. I want to make sure, though, that we can get some answers, and hopefully when they come in, on why is this taking so long? How much money's been wasted? You know, what resources have gone into pilots that it was evident was a waste of our time? Not in the long term, but in the short term when you're in a crisis, it never looked like the right move. And those funds for transformation are vital funds. There's not a lot of money knocking around for transformation. It should have been focused from the start. So I think Pat used the word chaotic earlier. I think that's not inappropriate in this context as well. So I just felt like, having asked so many questions around this, it was worth noting. Yes, good to see it, but I think we have to get to the bottom of why it's taken so long to get to this place.
Thank you. And I expressed frustration. Good to get the positive spin that committees maybe move the department's position perhaps on this and into a more of a delivery space. So we'll take that as a positive. Are we in agreement that we will continue to run the Senate inquiry until we've heard that, but that we would be urging the department then as quickly as they're able to give us this evidence. We agreed? Okay, and then item 4.3, and apologies for the amount of matters arising. There's just been a lot come back out of issues that we've discussed at length at committee before. So we have correspondence from the mental health champion, sharing correspondence between her office and the Minister and the department in relation to restrictive practice and the lack of statutory guidance on that. That's at page 24. Again, happy to seek members' views. I mean, I would comment, I think this really adds just further to that picture of a loss of trust between the key stakeholders and experts in this field and the department. But at question time this week, it does appear the Minister is now bringing draft guidance forward to public consultation. So that may have overtaken the process rather, and stakeholders will have the opportunity to input. But it doesn't perhaps suggest that it's been a co-designed process as we might have hoped for. But if anyone has anything to add, I suggest we note.
Yeah, as I say, the most disappointing thing I picked from last week was the fact that no engagement with like Children's Law or the Children's Commissioner. I was really worried about it, and obviously the youth group that they have. It does feed into everything at the minute, so I was really disappointed that you couldn't even spend a bit of time with them. They're the experts.
Yeah. It's clear the mental health champion, there's been a significant and sustained attempt to engage, which has largely been rebuffed. But okay, and not anything to add. We'll wait to see what the draft consultation or the consultation on the draft guidance looks like when it emerges. And then I would also just add to members to their attention, page 3 of tabled papers, we have correspondence from Tiny Life and Relate, the charity that works with families impacted by premature birth regarding their funding. But it's just to really update members that we have now scheduled an informal briefing with Tiny Life. We had said we wanted to limit those, but I think given the funding precipice they're facing, it would be appropriate to hear from them. I'm sure all members have engaged with their really excellent work in their constituencies. But content to note that unless there's anything to add. No. Okay, item 5, draft minutes. So I'd refer members to the draft minutes of the Education Committee meeting of the 18th of February 2026 at page 39, and I would just seek agreement that the minutes are a complete and accurate record of proceedings. Is that agreed? Agreed. Okay, thank you. Okay, so that takes us on to item 6, and that is an oral briefing from both department and EA officials on the Special Educational Needs Regulations 2026. So this is an SL1, so we're looking at draft regulations at this stage. So I would refer members to the Clerk's note at page 47, the SL1 at page 52, and then relevant papers in relation to that, pages 64 to 237. So I'll just let everybody get settled, but run through who we have presenting here today. We have Deirdre Ward, Director for SEND Strategic Policy in the Department of Education, Julie McBride, Head of Special Education Review Team in the Department, Dr Tomas Adell, Chief Transformation Officer in the EA, and Tracey Logan, Interim Head of SEND Statutory Services in the EA. So you're all very welcome here today. Thank you for coming back, second week in a row. I think you'll have heard from some initial discussions. There might be a couple of things we just wanted to flag, but probably very briefly in terms of reference, and we'll get into the detail around the SL1 and these draft regulations at this stage. So I think really at this stage, before we move into any engagement with members, probably best just to hand over for any initial presentation on the SL1 and the draft regulations. These are obviously quite technical, and it may not be even for the public watching necessarily that easy to link in and understand exactly what these regulations are doing. So I think we look forward to getting that engagement in terms of what this is going to look like on a practical level should these regulations go ahead. So hand over for initial presentation, and then we'll move to question and answer. So is it Deirdre?
Thank you. It's me, yes, thank you. And thanks for the opportunity to provide committee with an update on the regulations 2026. The last formal update was provided on the 23rd of June 2021 when the Department presented a summary of the main themes emerging from the public consultations on these regulations. But more recently, on the 20th of November 2024, officials briefed the committee on progress to date. You'll appreciate that the revised scrutiny process is new to us all, and while we have sought to follow the required steps carefully, We acknowledge that the explanatory, and that's hard to say, and financial memorandum should have been provided from the outset, and we apologise for this oversight. We've worked to ensure that the memorandum includes sufficient information to support your considerations. However, the Department's happy to provide any further detail as required. Although the committee's scrutiny process focuses on the proposed statutory rule, we also appreciate the critical importance of the support and code of practice in enabling schools and the EA to understand their statutory responsibilities. Our intention had been to finalise the code during the committee's scrutiny period, allowing additional time to refine it in collaboration with the EA. That work's progressing well, and I can confirm that the revised code of practice will be available to members by mid-March. Today, I'll outline the current position and next steps in relation to the implementation of SEN regulations. The Special Educational Needs and Disability Act 2016 received royal assent on the 23rd of March 2016. We fully acknowledge that it's taken considerably longer than anticipated to bring these regulations to a point of readiness. Since 2018, departmental officials have used the opportunity to undertake a comprehensive redrafting of the SEN regulations. This work has allowed us to introduce important new rights for parents as well as for children and young people over compulsory school age, and to provide for the establishment of a mediation service. Given the scale of the revisions since the first consultation in 2018, it was necessary to carry out a further consultation on both the redrafted regulations and the supporting code of practice. The second consultation period was extended to account for the significant disruption caused by COVID. Since the restoration of the Assembly in February 2024, officials from the Department and the EA have been working collaboratively to finalise the regulations, ensuring they're fully aligned with the wider changes being taken forward by SEN reform. You've received a copy of the finalised regulations in advance of today's meeting, and these build on the existing framework for the assessment and identification of special educational needs as set out in Part 2 and Schedules 1 and 2 of the Education Order of 1996. These regulations revoke and replace with modifications the Special Educational Needs Regulations, Northern Ireland of 2005. Their core purpose is to ensure that every child with special educational needs receives the appropriate support so they can reach their full potential while promoting inclusion, equity and partnership across the system. The key changes being introduced are that the Education Authority must prepare, consult and publish its annual plan of arrangements for special education provision on or before the 31st of July every year. Every school must appoint a learning support coordinator, and each child on the SEN register must have a personal learning plan, PLP. The overall statutory timescale for assessment through to the making of a statement will be reduced from 26 to 22 weeks. Children over compulsory school age are to be given their own rights. A new right of appeal following annual review of statements is to be introduced. A new right of appeal of an EA decision not to make a statement for a child under 2 or about the content of a statement will be introduced. A new independent mediation service will also be introduced. We anticipate that the SEN framework comprising the 2016 SEND Act, the updated SEN regulations and a revised statutory code of practice will come into operation on the 1st of September 2026. Our delivery partners in the EA, as well as colleagues in the Department of Health and Justice, are fully committed to supporting its implementation. In recent weeks, we've also met with representation from the Northern Ireland Commissioner for Children and Young People and from the Children's Law Centre to provide an update on the regulations. We'll continue to work closely with these key stakeholders as we finalise the supporting guidance for children and young people and for their parents. This collaborative engagement is an important part of ensuring that the new framework is understood, implemented consistently and delivers the improved outcomes that children deserve. We recognise that the period between now and September 26 presents an ambitious timeframe, particularly ensuring that the regulations receive the level of scrutiny that they require. We remain committed to progressing the legislation at pace. The Department believes it's essential to move forward decisively so that these positive and necessary changes can be implemented as swiftly as possible. Significant work has been ongoing to ensure that the delivery partners are ready for its commencement with the necessary structures, guidance and resources firmly in place ahead of September 26. This has been supported by focused training delivered by EA SEND implementation team to schools, EA staff, ensuring everyone understands their role. The new SEND framework delivers significant and long overdue changes to how we identify, support and plan for children and young people with SEN. These reforms aren't just administrative updates, they support the system to deliver timely, consistent and meaningful support to children and young people with SEN. Cooperation with delivery partners is being strengthened through the introduction of a joint education and health plan, and this is a crucial step ensuring that departments work seamlessly together at every stage of the SEN journey. Reduced timescales for assessment through the making of a statement are key in ensuring that children and young people receive the right support at the right time. The digitisation of the statutory assessment process is an important step towards meeting these timescales. The introduction of independent mediation service will provide a timelier and more informal route for resolving disagreements. This will help to reduce stress for parents and ensure that they remain fully involved in decision-making processes. And importantly, it underscores our commitment to working collaboratively, to listening to parental concerns, and to identifying the most appropriate support for each child, supporting efforts to rebuild confidence and trust in the system. The SEN framework is closely aligned to the changes which are fundamental to the delivery of the SEN reform agenda, namely a stronger focus on earlier intervention, improved collaboration between health and education, and a move towards greater inclusion. In bringing forward these regulations, we're one step closer to a system which can better meet the needs of children and young people with SEN. Chair and members of the committee, I will now hand over to you and welcome any questions that you have.
Thank you. And I'll just maybe flag just a couple of the things that were coming up at the start of our meeting. And look, I really don't propose to take up a huge amount of time with this, but it was just as correspondence had come in around the enhanced support model, and obviously there's been a lot of media coverage and a lot of parental commentary on social media and all of that, as I think everyone would have anticipated around that. And I suppose that the thing that I wanted to ask was, I think there is obviously, we always knew any reforms in this space would create a comms challenge and a real challenge in terms of engaging with parents around that confidence building and trust aspect of it. So I would just like to get clarity. Is there a plan in place at departmental or EA level to really go out with some really proactive engagement with parents to help? Because my sense is parents want to engage with this, they want to understand what this all means. Is there a plan in place to do that? And in terms of as these plans take shape, because I do think they are quite high level at the moment, as they take shape into something more practical, is there going to be space for public consultation so that there will be opportunity to engage? I don't want to derail this evidence session, because this is really important what we've got in front of us today, and I understand that, but I think just given the amount of concern that has been feeding through on this, are any of those questions things that you can speak to?
Yeah, I mean, I'll maybe start, and I'm sure Tomas will come in on that. Yeah, absolutely, and it'll be a joint plan for communication and engagement right across the ecosystem. Absolutely, we're really keen to hear from parents, and absolutely there will be consultation.
Yes, so we intend to launch public consultation in March. So I mean, we get everyone have a chance to contribute and say, and then obviously we take it from there. And as I said last week, if there are alternative plans, other ways of doing things to get better for our children, we want to hear that, because that's what their aim is.
I think that clarity for me is very helpful, because certainly the message I've been hearing from parents is yes, a bit of panic, and social media feeds some of that, but genuine uncertainty around just what will this mean for me and what will this mean for my child, and I think if there's the opportunity for public consultation, that feels like a positive step. I'll move on to the regulations. So for me, when I was looking at this, and this has caused me some consternation this week, and just of making sure I actually understood what I was looking at today, and I'm just going to be completely honest, this is definitely technical space, and I think for all members who are not engaged at a day-to-day level in schools with what this operationally looks like, we get a sense from dealing with parents of what processes feel like, but the regulatory framework around it we're maybe not as intimately familiar with. The challenge that I had with this is understanding what you're setting out these new regulations will do, of being completely clear of what elements then are changing. So what is changing from the current regulatory framework? So you're saying you're going to do X. How is that different from what we have now? And that perhaps just in the regulations themselves and in some of the explanatory material, I don't feel I'm quite clear on exactly just currently looks like this. We're proposing changes to this. Is that something that could be provided for members? Because I personally would feel that would be really, really helpful. So just around each element, that where there is a new regulation coming through, what is actually changing? So not what it does, but how that is different from what we have now. Probably seems a very, very basic request, but for me it would have just helped me understand exactly. It's okay, something may seem okay in isolation, but if you don't know what it's necessarily replacing.
Yeah, we can provide that. It's mostly what Deirdre mentioned in her opening statement, but we can absolutely provide that for you. Yeah.
I think just having that just clearly in writing as a reference point for members, sort of lifted out from the technical wording of the regulations, I think would be really helpful. So that's just a sort of initial question on that. Maybe going back to the theme of public consultation, just at a sort of higher level, this was all consulted on 5 years ago, is that right, roughly, that sort of timescale? Obviously we've moved on a lot since then, we're now looking at a different iteration of these regulations. How much consideration was given to just going back out to public consultation on these to really take the temperature at the public level from all key stakeholders around how they feel about this?
I think in terms of these regulations, because we've already consulted twice, and the redraft of regulations that you now have took on board the consultations from the last time, we didn't feel it was necessary to go out again for consultation.
Okay, so you'd be confident that what we've got in front of us reflects the feedback was that received last time. Is that largely what the redraft has done, reflected those views, or are there other elements to this that were brought in?
No, it broadly reflected the reviews. I suppose the one thing that was in the draft regulations was the mention of an alternative person to act on behalf of the child of compulsory school age. That has been removed. And the reason being is that there doesn't seem to be any primary legislation vehicle that actually allows for that. And also there was concern raised about, yes, the person who acts on their behalf has to be over 18, but also, how do we know that that person is acting in the best interest of the child? How do we know that the child knows the Zen system? So it was those kind of things. So that is one of the elements that was removed, but I think that's the only one.
Again, sort of before getting into the detail of the regs, and other members may get into that in more detail, the operational date of September 2026, how crucial is that?
I think for us, we've been working a lot, and I appreciate you need to do your proper scrutiny, absolutely appreciate that. And I think for us, because we've been working at these for so long, we're confident that the department and our colleagues are ready for the 1st of September, but appreciate you need time to scrutinise them.
Maybe just to ask the question slightly differently, and I'm not here to suggest that there's any. I have no interest in delaying anything unnecessarily. But if there is a need to maybe consult a bit more widely than committee might usually on secondary legislation, they are technical. They will have a very direct operational impact. If that's not ready to go live for September, in terms of wider work in the system, the transformation programme, things that you're doing in that space, does that substantially impact that if there is a delay, to give us the time to ensure we're satisfied with these?
I think we would need to consider an appropriate date. I suppose we've picked the 1st September because new academic year, and I suppose it's about when's the right time to introduce those new duties. Now, saying that, they're not all going to be up ready and running from the 1st September. We were planning some sort of phased implementation, but obviously, it's something that we can consider if the committee wishes us to.
And which start date is picked is obviously is a political decision. From an operation perspective, as long as the start date matches with academic years, that's important for us, because that's how we get the cycles work. So if it's not 1st September this year, the best start date for us will be September next year. So it's that kind of delays, because that's how it works well for us in our cycles for planning the academic year. So change something during academic year is more difficult, not impossible, but more difficult operationally for a year.
And if we're say looking at September 26, when would you say these need to be on the statute book then, in advance of September, to allow the system to be ready? Obviously, if they land on the 1st of September, that might not be appropriate. So what sort of lead-in time do you think that schools and the EA need to operationalise this?
Well, there's been lots of preparatory work done. I mean, we've been working on these since 2016. The Central Implementation and Development Team, as Julie and Deirdre had referenced, we've been training on this with schools since 2018. So lots of that groundwork has been done. The PL, in summary, I suppose, when you're talking about the key elements of these regulations, it's to really the time scale. So we're, it's going to benefit anybody. These, if we get those down from 26 to 22 weeks, and we're already working on that and monitoring that within the EA. The right of appeal, we already have that right of appeal, but this is going to be on the back of all of the annual reviews. Learning support coordinators will already have Senkos. I mean, there's not a huge change with that. So it's building on what already is already there. So I'm not saying that it's actually going to be that big of a challenge, in terms of schools embracing it. A lot of the preparatory work has already been done. Okay.
I just have one question on the regs. Probably a lot of this I'll just defer anything on until I've heard from other stakeholders who are much more familiar with the legal framework on this. There does seem to be a little bit of an issue around Section 3 and Section 6 of a statement, and one carrying appeal rights and one not. And there's a suggestion that a lot of sort of the health type interventions may end up landing in Section 6. So the sort of initial feedback I've heard from many parents and practitioners in this space is a slight concern that there might be an attempt to put health interventions in the school setting out of the remit of appeals. How would you respond to that?
Well, we did actually take legal advice on what could go into the various sections of the regulation. You're right, it's very technical and it's very complicated, and there was quite a lot of toing and froing to get a firm opinion on that. But ultimately, the opinion that we were advised was that it's for EA to decide what parts of the statement go into what bit of the schedule.
It's about, we talk about nature and extent, and that's really what we're coming down to. And the current code and the new code, and I know you haven't seen that yet, but we are, speech and language, that always has been in part 3 of the statement, and I don't see that changing, because that is very much an educational impact within schools. But the like of a non-transport or a non-educational, it could be transport, that's never been something that's there and appealable at this moment in time. So again, as Deirdre was saying, we're taking the legal advice on it. If a child is needing a particular type of health intervention, we have to seek it, and health are then going to be, the duty is on them then to provide that. So I again wouldn't see any huge changes in terms of the statement. We have done a lot of work on the statement template and what that's going to look like in the new world, and it's not an awful lot of change. There's a 7th part to it, but the 7th part is really about the monitoring, and that's just been lifted out of part 3 that it is there currently. Okay.
Again, probably I'll defer any further comment just till I've heard more evidence on that. Last thing for me is just that draft code of practice. Obviously that's the practical outworking that will help people really understand how these translate into reality in a school setting. You've said mid-March for those and to share those with members. Is that something as well that we can go out to stakeholders with to share? Is that something that will be shared widely? Because I think if we're going to get engagement on this, for me, full transparency would be helpful.
It again was consulted on as well a couple of years ago. And again, the changes that have been made to it have just been to reflect the regulations. And at the minute we're going through it in terms of checking the cross-referencing. So happy to give it to committee and just flying up now. It's a big document. Yeah. So you'll need time to read it.
But again, just my question was in terms of that'll be shared with committee, in terms of being able to share that more widely with other stakeholders or with parents or Senkos who might want to see that. Is that something that you anticipate? Because I think if we were going to get real feedback on this, that's the practical outworking, and I would be keen to see the opportunity for that to be shared.
Yeah, I suppose in terms of the Central Implementation Team, that's something that they will be doing. That was kind of the plan for the 3rd term, where we are out working with Senkos, training them, and we'll be taking the feedback on particular areas that are going to impact on them particularly. So I know
I'll maybe be more direct. When you share the draft code of practice with us, can we put that out to our stakeholders? Because I would like to be able to do that.
I think so.
I don't see any reason
I
why
don't
you
see
can't.
we want to
Because
be
it is going to be a public
transparent.
document.
That's
We
well,
want
that's
to get
great.
it,
Yeah,
and we
yeah,
want
yeah.
to get it right.
Yes,
So,
because I think
yeah.
that'll help
Yeah.
scrutiny to, you know, for people to get a practical sense of what we're dealing with. So that's really helpful. Okay, I'll bring in the deputy chair, and if other members want to then indicate.
Thanks, Chair. Julie, when you said the code of practice was consulted on a couple of years ago, what did you mean by a couple?
Sorry, it was done at the same time as the Zen regulations. That was 2021. Yeah,
Right, so
yeah.
it's 5 years. Fair enough. And so these regulations are 10 years in the making, am I right in saying that?
Yes.
Well, why has it taken so long?
If I'm being honest, there has been a lot of staffing changes within the department. So I came into the team halfway through the public consultation. My brain doesn't work legally, so it takes me a lot of time to actually understand what's in them. And as you said, they're complicated, they're extremely detailed. We also had a number of changes within the team, so there has been a lot of resourcing issues on our side. And that's probably the main reason why it's taken so long to get here.
Well, I probably a brain similar to your own, so it's not easy, given the technical and complicated nature of this, to get our heads around it. And I don't want to insult any of you here today, but we have had taken evidence from officials before which turned out to be misinformation, that was totally wrong. So I'm not saying I don't trust any of you, and I'm not accusing any of you of giving us information, but the fact that it has happened before means that we need to take soundings from other stakeholders in the system, the likes of the Children's Law Centre,
Yeah.
Human Rights Commission, NICI, and all of those groups who have a big stake in all of this. So, I mean, first of all, I mean, I'm not going to rush into giving my view on this. I think it would be wrong, given that all of this is 10 years in the making. I think it would be wrong. We've been talking about other issues today that we feel that the Minister is pushing on with much too quickly. It's creating chaos in schools. Teachers are telling us they're totally overwhelmed, with the amount of consultations, the amount of change, the amount of reform, and so on. So I've no other real questions for you, but I just wanted to make that point clear. Thanks. If any want to come back, feel free.
Can I just say, I mean, of course, we want you to scrutinise it properly. That's the purpose of. I mean, in the same way we do have a job to do, that's the job you have to do. So we fully accept that.
Yeah.
Okay.
We did brief the Children's Commissioner and the Children's Law Centre just quite recently to tell them that we were coming to committee and to explain where we'd got to and the status that we had, and that's not the only conversation that we'll have with them, but it was just to update them in advance of us coming here today.
Okay, thanks for that, Deirdre. Teacher.
Thank you, Deputy Chair Danny. You indicated.
Just quickly start with. I have been asking the question for the last couple of years of the Minister in particular, and it was always either they're on their way or they're imminent. And his last reply gave to me, the delay certainly wasn't on his side of the house. So I am really just following from what Pat said. You're saying it was staff changing, but what was there other complications here? Because I first asked this question about the regs and the code of practice. The Minister 18 months ago thought they were en route.
I probably wrote those answers for him, and we did expect them to be en route, but they are complicated. But I mean, I am absolutely delighted that we've actually got to this stage, and yes, the legal process is complicated, but we're here.
We are here. See, as far as the Children's Law Centre and the Children's Commissioner, did you share the regs with them? Did they see them and the code of practice?
They have seen them previously. And obviously we've met with
ones?
They haven't seen the revised ones yet. What we did say is probably as part of your consultation, they will see them through that process.
So just basically got an update that you were coming to tell us about them?
No, we would give them a verbal walkthrough on what the changes were, but we were being, well, from my perspective, I wanted that first conversation to be with committee, and then we'll give them the documentation after that. But yes, we walked them through verbally.
And it would be fair to say that it's probably impossible to properly understand and give an analysis of the regs without the code of practice.
The code of practice, yes, was puts the meats on the bones and gives a bit more information for the school. So yeah, both should be read in tandem. Yeah.
The SEND framework relies heavily upon like a statutory code. Just for example, the 3 stages of the code, and they're not within their rages.
That's correct. They're in the code. Yeah.
Yeah. So that code of practice is really important. So I suppose why do we not get them both together?
Again, I will put my hands up. Happy to. Because this is a statutory process in terms of the statutory regulations. Rightly or wrongly, we assumed that only the regulations needed to be shared with yourselves, but that we anticipated that the code of practice would then be ready for the assembly stage. And the code of practice is nearly there, and we've said we'll get it to you by mid-March.
This is where I draw my line and keep my powder dry, because until I have that, I'm not really going to make my mind up on them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Danny. Cara, you'd indicated next.
Yep, thank you so much, Chair. Thank you to the panel for being here again. My first question is just around, we know that SEN regulations apply to across all our school sectors. Can you just detail more today about what specific plans and mechanisms are in place to ensure that our children in Irish medium schools in that full sort of immersive language setting receive support that is linguistically and in practice appropriate?
Yeah.
Right. So Irish medium in SEN, Irish medium in general, the workforce is a challenge for us. So we're working actively with Irish medium sector to essentially come up with a good plan of attack for how to approach SEN in general, not just children with a statement of SEN, but the wider SEN support. So we're not dropping Peter to pay Paul to take staff from the Irish medium sector into EA to deliver the service, and then don't have staff in the schools. So, but that's a joint process working with staff to find the best solutions. There are some challenges across SEN, across particular categories where in the Irish medium are, for example, some assessment tools and literacy doesn't exist in the Irish medium. And it's not just a matter of translating from English or another language. And there's no solution to buy in from somewhere else because it just don't exist. That there are some of those really structural problems which are difficult to deal with. But we're trying to find practical solutions because we think it's absolutely important that a child who have a SEN or statement, whether statement is or not, and whose parents wants to have the child in Irish medium should have the right to the same education as their peers do.
Absolutely.
That is an absolutely core fundamental. It just the staffing resource is tricky.
Can I ask, just given the complexity of that then, how much of a priority is it for yourselves to ensure that children in Irish medium settings get the support that they need? And given that it is such an issue, how often are those meetings that you're having with the Irish medium sector?
I mean, so this is a project. I mean, I must admit, I wasn't prepared for that question today, so I don't have all the details explicitly. But I mean, I spoke to my relevant assistant director about this either yesterday or Monday. So that's how recent it was on my agenda. I was meant to meet some Irish medium representatives last week, but my daughter was in hospital, so I had to postpone that meeting. This is something that's happening as we speak, and it's a priority for us. The solutions aren't easy. It's not a matter of money; it's a matter of having the right people and the right tools. So, and that is just, I'm putting my hand up saying it's tricky, but we take it very, very serious.
Okay, no, that's good. At least we're having a commitment. We just, ultimately, I don't want to see our Irish medium students left behind, and I hope your daughter's feeling much better. Just moving on then, when it comes to workforce capacity, you had touched on there's real significant challenges when it comes to our workforce. Do you have any further detail to hand on how many speech and language therapists are currently available in our school system, and if there's any projected shortfall over the next 3 years?
Not at hand. Sorry, I mean, I have that information, but I wasn't expecting that question today. I can only apologise that I don't have that information with me. I have to come back in writing. We know we don't have sufficient speech and language support. I would caution that by saying that we're not necessarily of the view that speech and language therapists should always be the case. It's speech and language therapy that should be available. And we're working with Department of Health officials on other models on how to deliver speech and language therapy in education in the best way possible. But there's definitely workforce shortage or gap. And therefore a gap to delivery for pupils that we're actively working to find solutions for.
Okay, thank you. Just lastly then, talking about metrics and accountability. So members across the committee have rightfully talked about today, there's lots of changes, there's lots of transformations, and our parents and our school leaders really want to understand what this will mean for our young people. When I was reading our pack, there is language about metrics, which is good, but the more operational aspect and details would be helpful for us as a committee to really communicate to our parents and school leaders about, you know, how this will play out. So I'm just wondering, how will the department demonstrate that the reform has real, tangible, improved outcomes rather than simply stabilised costs when it comes to SEN reform and regulations?
So there is an outcomes framework which was published earlier in this year, and there is work now to take forward to understand how we begin to report against priorities and publish that information, not least to surface that information with this committee. So based on the framework that is already in the public domain, yes, there are key metrics within that we will start now to be measuring and to be publishing.
That will be published transparently, that we can see it, the public can see it?
I'm hopeful, yes, of doing that. This is new information for me. I've only inherited the SEN Reform Outcomes Framework in less than 2 weeks ago, so I'm still also getting my head wrapped around all of the priorities that are within that, but absolutely we will be taking what is in that framework and measuring and publishing against that.
I suppose I would just add to that, Cara, in terms of, I mean, one of the big ones is the 26 to 22 weeks. So we're already starting to look at that. I mean, we've been looking at that to measure against how we would be performing against the 22 weeks as opposed to the 26 weeks. So we've already started to collate that data within the service as well.
And in addition, like I said, we as an EA working on those kind of operational metrics. We're looking at plans on how we can publish those regularly, because we don't want to hide the data. So where we do well, we want to show the good stories, but we also don't want to hide the bad stories where we're struggling. We don't have regular publication of those. That's something we are working to change, so we can show that publicly and openly to everyone.
Okay, no, thank you very much. I just know, speaking with parents, they really want to be able to not only see the changes happening, but really feel it in their lives and their children's lives. So no, that's really helpful. And if I have any additional questions, I'll follow up in writing. Thank you very much.
Could I come in for some clarity?
Yes,
on
no
it?
problem.
Just, Thomas, you made a distinction there between speech and language therapists and speech and language therapy. Is there an implication there that people who aren't speech and language therapists could be delivering the therapy?
In line with healthcare models, and I think that's the key point. The speech and language is a healthcare intervention. So when we're working with the Chief Allied Health Professional Officers, Department of Health, they've indicated that they're looking at models of how speech and language therapy is delivered, and that's how we shouldn't do different than the health service, say best practices, because they're the experts. So that's, I mean, and what I'm saying, speech and language therapy for children is a key point.
And who would be doing that?
Sorry?
I don't understand. I mean, I would have thought if speech and language therapy is to be delivered, it's by the therapist, but you're saying that's not necessarily the case. So
I mean,
who would it be?
When speech and language, I mean, so it's a similar way that you have across health service different banding of staff. So a consultant, which is a doctor, obviously, but a different grade of doctor, leads care but doesn't deliver all the care. You have other doctors to deliver care. So in that sense, you can have speech and language staff who are therapists, and some are not in the same banding. But that's a healthcare decision, and that my point was just that we don't.
They're still therapists, or they're not therapists?
I mean, that's my point. Is it's a healthcare model. We need to have the model of healthcare to best practice for delivering therapy.
Thomas, I'm not trying to be pedantic here. I'm just trying to figure out, because we have heard, for instance, in the literacy teams, that their job is sometimes to instruct teachers or classroom assistants to deliver literacy. And I'm just wondering, is this another type of situation where it's not the person who's trained to deliver, in this case, speech and language therapy, it's going to be someone else entirely? Is a speech and language therapy going to instruct a teacher to deliver that? I mean, I don't know. That's what I'm asking you.
That's not the intention. It's make sure that we follow the healthcare's best practice model for how they deliver their models of their services. That's it's not about getting educational staff. Sorry, bad language here. Educational staff, so our school staff that are, or sorry, current school staff, I should say, that delivers healthcare interventions. It should be healthcare staff in line with their models. So that's what I'm trying to say.
To be honest, I'm totally confused. I'm not sure what you're saying, because I think it's quite simple to say who is going to be delivering, what type of professional or health professional or whoever is going to be delivering speech and language therapy. That's not a hard question. I don't think it is.
I mean, and I'm trying to answer it.
Can I give an example just to see if I've got it in this sense? Is it sort of similar to a doctor versus a physician's associate in that sense, where you've got a junior member working under a senior member as part of the same team who would be delivering some of their service but maybe isn't trained to deliver all of it?
I wouldn't go into the controversial physician associates, because that's but different grading I think is better said in the healthcare on a healthcare professional.
But even in David's example, there's a doctor and the other person who's delivering is called a physician's assistant or whatever it is. So what's the equivalent of the physician's assistant?
And that's the models that the Department of Health and healthcare officials are working on, how to best provide speech and language therapists and other health professionals for that sake. So in the same way that you have, I mean, if I can get to healthcare, because I know some of that better quite well. So in the same way that a doctor prescribes medication, nurse administration, that's not inappropriate. It's the right profession delivering the right care for the patient. That's what I'm saying. So the gap we have is how many children should receive speech and language therapy in line with what healthcare say best way to meet their healthcare needs for speech and language therapy. That's the gap we need to fill, right? Which so they then can attain their academic education along with their peers. It's not an educational intervention. It's a healthcare intervention to allow education. If you see what I'm trying to get at, it's not.
I'm not.
I'm more confused now than I was.
Sorry, here. Apologies if I'm not clear enough. It makes perfect sense in my head, so I can only apologise, Pat. I'm not trying to be awkward.
Can I make a suggestion, Deputy Chair, that perhaps when we finish this as a committee, we have a chat about maybe a bit of follow-up correspondence to try and clarify this, because it is a little unclear from my perspective as well. Okay, Michelle, you'd indicated.
Thanks, folks. I think we're all coming at this a bit tentatively, aren't we? We're just not quite 100% on the detail, but a couple of things just I wanted to ask about. We've talked about health, and there's stuff in there around health trusts having to provide information, and they have to guarantee that. They have to provide support. Assessment, here it is. Health and Social Service Authority must comply with requests to SSEA making assessments, preparing a statement within prescribed limits. So what have you done, or what agreements are in place that we are sure that's guaranteed and not just words on a page, if you like?
We work with Hell. I don't know who's going to, but we've been, not all at once. We have been meeting throughout all of this process. We've met with Health, and we've had representatives there, and they've been involved in the wording and the phrasing within the regulations. So they're well aware of what's coming. It's not an awful lot different. That's what's there already. We still have that duty to request that support and advice from them, and that's not changing. In that respect, we're still going to be requesting that help, and they will then be obviously bringing that to us in terms of nature and extent of what that support might look like. But there has been a lot of engagement with them, with Health, not just around this, but with the Health and Health Education Joint Plan. And there's been we had a lot of discussions, Julie, around the table with Health in terms of the actual content and what that looks like and the wording of that within the regulations. I can go back to 2016 whenever it was the SEND bill that was coming for lots of debate around that stage, there was a lot of feedback at that stage from them as well. So they've been involved in the whole process the whole way through. And more recently, like just last week, we met with them to go through it again.
The regulations, so when they come in, and again, if I'm missing the mark here, keep me right, but when these regulations come in, will that guarantee that they will deliver these things on time? I mean, I think now they're supposed to, and it's variable whether it happens or not, but will this make any difference operationally in terms of they're going to have to do
advice?
But just providing what they need to complete the
I
statement.
think that goes back to what Tracey was saying. We're going to have to monitor, because obviously at the minute it's 26 weeks, and yes, the health is given a time period to provide the advice. Now, obviously, they have 6 weeks now, and they will have 6 weeks in the new regulations as well, so their time isn't being reduced. But once the new timescales come in, we will be monitoring to see, if there are delays, what those delays are. But also the good thing now is that people, EA and health, are sharing information electronically, so it's no longer being posted or that kind of stuff. So again, that helps to quick up the.
There's a new time limit within these regulations, so beforehand we wouldn't have had that. So there's a ceiling point on that. So we as an EA then have to make a decision. If we don't have the health advice, we have to make a decision then to go on ahead without it, and to draft a statement without that. So there's not an open-ended delay.
Yeah. But how appropriate will a statement be without their engagement? Will there be a gap there in terms of the right assessment?
You're not off the mark, but at the same time we can't answer, right?
Okay.
Because if it's statutory requirement on the public body to carry out a function and they don't carry out the function, well, very simplistically, they're breaking the law,
Okay.
right? Because that's what regulations are.
Mm-hmm.
We can't enforce the law.
No.
That's not our, that's in terms of our statutory bodies. That's not none of our functions in that sense. Most of the time it works. It is not perfect currently, but most of the time it does work.
Okay.
And there's been a lot of process of engagement to get that better, which has become, and we continue working on that. But at the same time, if a public body breaks the law, well, there are mechanisms for fixing that. But that sits out of our control, as with anything else.
But health also have health SEN coordinators and data analysts. So that was introduced a few years back as well, so that we know where the gaps are, the compliance rates, and turning that round and trying to get identify what those gaps are and how we close those.
Can I then use your words back on you, Thomas?
Yeah.
22 weeks for the assessment period. If that's statutory and you don't meet it, then you're breaking the law. Are there any enforcement against you guys, or what's the? How does that work?
It's the same with anything else. Yes, we would break the law, but it's the same if we're not making 26 we target now, we break the law. And then the appropriate remedies is like any other public body breaking the law. We can be taken to court for that.
Yeah.
That's the
Just
same.
trying to understand for parents wondering what happens when this comes in, or what the real change is. Is there any?
Well, I suppose let's health. So there's no upper ceiling on that at this moment in time. So that statutory set, and by health having made advice into us, that is an exception on that. So that the 26 weeks could run for ad infinitum, really. To be fair, that's not the upper time limit. Now will be 34 weeks as a complete ceiling. If we don't get the advice, there's an issue there, but we will be working with it with health and that. I suppose that, so there is a tighter time frame around it. There is about meeting that. There are exceptions in the system obviously still at this moment in time for those, and whenever we report in figures you'll see those with 26 weeks, over 26 weeks with exceptions and without exceptions. And the ones without exceptions are the ones that you're,
because we're not hitting the 26 weeks now often.
The average to get a final statement out is 24 weeks currently, so we're meeting that. There are currently 43 children over the 26 weeks, and the majority of those, I have to say, are to do with capacity placement issues. That's the challenge.
22 weeks is going to be a problem then.
22 weeks. So we're measuring that. So January 31st of January, we were at, I think it was 71%. It was 80% before for 26 weeks, down to 71% in January. Really, just I suppose the Christmas period affects that, and we're marking about 50% for 22 weeks. That, which for me is okay at this moment in time, but the average is for final statements 24 weeks. We're not far off it. I have to tell you, the digitisation of the system is transformative, and I'll hopefully get more of a chance to come back and give you more detail on that, but that the things that we're moving so fast through the system now, it really is great.
So when I was here in the autumn, I committed that we would meet 26 week target by the summer if we, subject to placements. We are there now, right, in February. Subject to placements, can we hit 22 weeks if this goes live in September? Yes. It's subject to placements, or have the staff leaving, but that's we don't know indication of that. But indication. But subject to placements.
Please don't do that.
Subject to placements. Will we meet 22 weeks by September? Yes. So that's our plan, and we will get there. Subject placements. Key points.
You'll have to just draw a line there, and then David, you'd indicated.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'm going to take it in a different direction. I believe Thomas has been communicated to you, and I was going to raise the avoidant restrictive food intake disorder issues. It's something I've wanted to bring to the committee some time, and I should credit it's both through engagement with my own constituents, but also through the former member of the committee, Cheryl Brownlee, who's lived experience, but also involved in a lot of special needs groups who've informed her thinking around this. So it was just to ask, in terms of the current schools meal framework, what flexibility there is for those, just to start with, what flexibility there is for those children who do have those difficulties, whether it's from autism, whether it's from ARFID or other similar sensory issues.
I know Tracey question. I have to admit I don't know.
I suppose I would say special dietary requirements aren't a special educational need in themselves. You know, there's lots of different systems out around that. But a child with autism might have a lot of sensory issues, and that, if we're going through statutory, that would be part and parcel of that, all of the advice and that we would get as part of the statutory assessment. But within the EA, obviously, we have the free school meal service as it's known, but there is a special dietary part of that where you can go through an application process, and that is all then considered within the school, making the school meal service, and they can provide that, and the child gets access through that. I suppose.
I'm thinking particularly of children where, and there may be wider issues you won't speak to, but thinking of children, you know, our school meals, particularly in the last sort of decade or two, Jamie Oliver and so on, it's become much more around nutrition and making sure, and great, super, but we know that there are those children who that doesn't work for, and that you have to feed them what they're willing to eat to some degree, and that is the case even at home. So where those children still need fed at school and so on, what is happening with them? Are they able to access food that they're able to eat, and particularly, and this goes a step further probably, for those that are availing of free school meals, for instance, how do we make sure that the provision that's available for them in terms of finance is actually resources is reaching them and serving them?
I'm not going to give you the specific answers in around the free school meals application process and the allocation of resources around that, because that doesn't sit within my remit. But there is an application process there. We have lots of children with SEN who will have a beige diet, a soft diet. Yes. You know so that will all be part and parcel if they've got a statement, or not even if they've got a PLP, or if they're on if they're on the SEN register, and there are aspects around that. The school has an anticipatory duty. They will absolutely be looking at that. But there is a framework then outside of that through that free school meal service, in terms of how children are accessing and how that is set out through that particular service. What I would say to you too as well is that we have a process where if the free school meal service gets an application form, they will contact us, for the contents of the statement and anything that we might have in the medical advice that might support that, so that we're sharing that information within the EA. But there is an anticipatory duty on schools to be able to do that, and they work with our free school meal service then to do that. And there's a lot of detail in that form about children, particular nuances around food.
Appreciate that. Then move on to something slightly different. Children with particularly with type 1 diabetes, and where carbohydrate counting is essential, obviously, to insulin management and so on. What systems are in place then to ensure that there's accurate nutritional information available to them and monitoring?
Okay, so again, that'll be me again. That's one of the medical needs service. That's within one of my SEN statutory services. So the diabetes was one of the services that moved a number of years ago away from statutory assessment, because we didn't want to have to go through that process. So there is a lot of information available through the dietetics, through the dietary nurse specialist. And there's a process for schools that if they feel they need additional resource there, that we don't go through statutory. There's an application process for that. It's on the website. We can get the details on it. There's lots of guidance out around that, lots of input from health with that as well, and the health specialists will go into schools and do lots of training, etc. around
is
that.
There? I'm just thinking a lot of school meals are sort of prepared in bulk and so on. Is there ability in any way to facilitate information around the carbohydrate density of those foods?
I think we'll have to take that back, I suppose, probably to the free school,
understandable.
To Stephen Briggs. I'll be able to hopefully help with that one.
Just one final one then, if that's okay.
There, David.
Thank you. Has any assessment been carried out on the impact of the current school meal policies on pupils who cannot access the standard menu?
I think you'll have to. I think that's something we'll have to take to the free school meal service. It isn't within my remit. I mean, so in terms, I suppose, in terms of children with special educational needs who have a statement, if there was anything that had to be brought within the statement to do that, we would be monitoring that through the annual review process. But it's not something that is high level, to be honest with you. I mean, there's not that. A lot of these children with dietary needs will be in our special schools as well, you know, and that is very well managed within those settings. So, but we can certainly ask with the preschool meal service.
Appreciate that.
And
I think the more I've engaged with the issue and it's been brought to me, the more complex, you know, I've realised that some of this stuff is. And I think I appreciate the opportunity to raise it today. But I think actually, I don't know, committee time is tight and so on. But I think it is something probably worth. Having, whether it's an informal meeting or otherwise, looking at maybe whether we can get more information on it, and because I think it is something that affects some of those children on a day-to-day basis. But thank you very much for the information.
We can certainly pick that up after the briefing, and we have strayed a wee bit from the regs, but I thank you for your flexibility on that. So I think we are very much of a view that we need to take quite a bit of extra evidence probably from key stakeholders on this before we can progress much further with this, and we may, you know, then when we've been informed with some of that evidence, hear from yourselves again on this. But at this stage, thank you for the evidence you've provided, and we'll be in touch again. Okay, thank you. Thanks. Okay, members, so a couple of things before we get to anything formal in terms of the process in this. I just wanted to check that we do have it noted in relation to an undertaking that I'd asked for at the start around getting some sort of comparator around new regulations versus the current regulatory framework, just so that we have an easy cross-reference of what is actually changing from the current system. I would find that very helpful in terms of dealing with this issue as we go through the process. And then there was also the questioning there from the Deputy Chair around speech and language therapy versus speech and language therapists, and I think a bit of correspondence that just seeks clarity as to who it is the EA anticipates in any new model would be appropriate people to deliver speech and language therapy. Because we didn't.
What you're looking for is job title. You know, it sounds to me like it's just someone working for a team underneath them, but you need to know who that is. You know.
I mean, I have some slight nervousness, and I don't want to, you know, create a drama out of something that isn't yet an issue. But when I look at nursing provision in schools, they often talk about a delegated model, and what that means is classroom assistants. And I'm not suggesting a classroom assistant wouldn't be capable of delivering some form of speech and language therapy, but there'd be a huge amount of training needs. And I think parents, when that's on their statement, have an expectation that it is a qualified speech and language therapist. But we're maybe shooting in the dark here because we don't quite know what's being referred to. So there may be an issue, there may not. But I think it would be appropriate.
Probably depends on the level of assistance the child's needs as well. You know, and what could be. Yeah.
No, we're happy to hear. But are we content? That's the question that we need to ask. Who the individuals who might be delivering this would be.
Thing to drop in without really having an explanation.
I mean, what made me prick up my ears was because he was so definite about making that distinction between speech therapist and speech therapy. So
it's worth asking them how their qualifications they have for the role. You know, just to get a wee bit more. Because
no, absolutely. I mean, I think
not just the
who's
title,
an appropriate
like
person, but what would their qualifications be, training, all of that. So yes, let's try and get some clarity on that and see where it lands. Anything else at all from that session that we need to pick up? There's probably now a need to make a formal agreement on next steps in terms of how we deal with SL1s. So I'm happy to move on to that unless there's anything else. No? Okay, so we went through in last week's session went through in detail what the new process was in relation to SL1, so that has all been noted. So I would like to suggest at this stage, and I'll get formal agreement, I've considered this back and forward in my mind whether we need to hear more evidence or we need more material before this goes out into a citizen space engagement so that people can comment on it. But I'm moving towards there doesn't seem to me to be any great advantage in holding this material. It's probably better to get it out into the public domain. So that would be my suggestion. Before I sort of put a formal question on that, can I get a sense, is everybody on the same page with that? Yeah. Okay. So I would just caveat that with, as well as going out to a citizen space, I think if members are agreed as well, we should proactively engage with stakeholders in this space who are on our stakeholder list. We've already referenced the likes of Children's Law Centre. I would say the Equality Commission, Human Rights Commission, Children's Commissioner, those organisations will want to speak to this, so we should make proactive contact probably with all our stakeholders to open that up. But on that basis then, so I'm going to seek agreement from members if we agree to issue a call for views for the SL1 using the standard survey that has been issued, and to publish the SL1, the draft SR and any other relevant documents the Department have provided on the committee website. Are we agreed?
Just long will that be?
That was my next question. So are we agreed that we'll go down to that? And then the next question that I need to check with members is that there is a minimum period of 9 days. Am I correct in that? I would suggest we need more than 9 days on this. This is very, very technical, but it's one of those odd ones that it's highly technical, but it's got very immediate practical outworkings as soon as it would be agreed. So it is important that we do get it right. So I mean, I would want to suggest at a minimum of 4 weeks on this, but I'm happy to take suggestions if we think we have, as far as I understand, and I'll check with the clerk, we have complete flexibility in terms of how long
we do.
We offer this out for.
Yeah, so the new scrutiny process requires a minimum, the committee to take a minimum of 4 weeks. But at the SL1 stage, this is your opportunity to understand all of the material and to hear from people, so you don't want to rush it. Yeah. So that's not unreasonable.
Does 4 weeks for the citizen space with a direct call for people to come to present to us and give oral evidence from an expert position on this, or does that feel reasonable? I'm conscious there is
just on the regs. Sorry.
That's just on the regs, yeah.
I'm just conscious that my view would be without the code of practice, you can't really understand it fully, so and we're not going to get that to mid-March.
Yeah,
I would be uncomfortable with that.
My feeling on this would be that the citizen space that we're putting out is probably going to draw in the expert evidence, and once we have the code of practice, then I think we could possibly look to how we would engage with probably more parental and teacher stakeholders.
I would suspect though that that side of the house is going to say the same thing. They're not going to be able to give you a full reflective analysis without the code of practice.
Do take your point. We have just agreed, by the way, to go out to a citizen space, so that is important to note that. But my concern at the minute is that if we don't go out to the citizen space now, I think we'll be seen to be holding these back from getting them out into the public.
You said we can look at how you engage. So it's not a case of we're closing that down. It's just a case of. I
did get clear confirmation from them that they have no objection to us sharing the draft code of practice as well when it's available.
It's just when we're taking the evidence. I'm just conscious that maybe we get ones in. I could be wrong here, but if they start turning around going, we can give you a wee bit here, but without the code of practice, we can't give you a proper analysis.
Well, if it's helpful, if it's mid-March, we'll not be getting evidence before mid-March on this, I wouldn't imagine, in terms of our availability in the work programme. So I'm happy to have the discussion here. I mean, I have no particular agenda on this.
Can I just say, there's a distinction. You know, the citizen space is a standard 3 questions that goes out for every SL1 in the Assembly now. That's not to say that the committee can't do additional consultation of its own, but the citizen space is just really, are there unforeseen consequences, you know, that can inform our discussion, and it's really like, tell us your red flags essentially. But you can still go to your stakeholders and say, here's the regs, we'll come back to you when we get the code of practice.
I could be overthinking it. I just have in my head, I would say if it was even me in that space, I would like to have everything in front of me and then do it. But
Danny, the clerk and I have discussed this back and forward now for about 3 weeks, and probably I have our head absolutely turned in terms of me trying to work out all of this, because I am really conscious this is not your standard SL1 of some minor regulatory tweak. This has been, so we have waited for 10 years for this, so we do need to get it right. I'm going to suggest what I think the shape of it might look like to check that everybody's content with this. I think if we go out to the citizen space, we have a 4-week window, so that's really clear. We're not trying to hold these regs or keep them back from anybody. We want to get them out into the public domain. We can put a call out to our expert witnesses. I would hope by the time they're giving evidence that the draft code of practice will be available. And I would suggest if after that, there's nothing to stop the committee going out to its own consultation process to say, with all of this in the round, here's some questions we'd like stakeholders to feed back to us on. We are in control of this process in terms of time. We're not bound by that 4-week window. That's a minimum. It's not a target whatsoever. So if we're content with that, we all definitely agree. Because I want to be clear, there's no sense that I have no agenda to push this out, but I do have a nervousness about being seen to hold these regs back, because I think people want to see them. So okay. We are agreed then. So that moves us on to item 7 on the agenda, and this is on the proposed committee bill around the choice for pupils to wear trousers in school. It's an oral briefing from the Assembly's Research and Information Service, and I'm going to propose, as it covers legislation, discussions around that we take that in closed session if members are agreed. Agreed.
Committee Room 29. Sound. 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 Committee Room 29, 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 Sound.
Okay, so that is back into open session. So just again, for the benefit of anyone tuning into the session, the committee had received a briefing from the Assembly Research Service around some potential scrutiny points that need to be picked up with the department, which we're going to take away in relation to our committee bill. And we discussed just ongoing considerations around a timeline for moving towards drafting instructions being finalised, and we hope to have a session on that in the coming weeks to move through that process. Okay, that brings us on then to item 8 on the agenda, which is correspondence. So refer members to pages 332 to 771 of your packs, and then pages 10 to 32 of tabled papers, where we have a number of items tabled provided under correspondence. There's a summary note included for members' reference there. That's item 8.1, and I think possibly that has been updated in tabled papers as well. So I'll work through anything that requires decision or discussion by the committee. Otherwise it'll be as per the summary note, or if there's any other items raised by members. So item 8.3, page 332, it's a response from the Minister of Education on his engagement with the Northern Ireland Youth Assembly. Are we content to share the Minister's response with the Youth Assembly? We agreed. Item 8.4, page 334, is a response from the Minister of Education on guidance for schools in adverse weather conditions, and it indicates that the Department and EA are working to take forward the recommendations made on the review of emergency school closure arrangements following Storm Amy. Happy to seek members' views, but I would suggest at this stage maybe sharing there were a group of principals who had shared concerns with that. Are we content to share that with them? Agreed. Item 8.5, page 336. It's correspondence from the organisation Feeding Britain and Advice NI, providing a copy of correspondence sent to the Minister of Education on the issue of automatic enrolment to free school meals for universal credit claimants. This is an issue that I've corresponded with both Education and Communities Ministers on, and there has been an undertaking to do some work on this, but I'm really not clear where it's at. So I would like to suggest that we share that correspondence with both the Education and Communities Ministers and ask them each to provide an update on their work towards auto-enrolment, and also I think it would be appropriate to share that with the Communities Committee in case it's a piece of work they wish to pick up. Is that, we agreed? Agreed. Item 8.8, page 370, it's correspondence from an individual regarding concerns about the effect of HMRC's tax-free childcare scheme on children in Northern Ireland who are born in July and August, who due to start date for the school year that differs to GB can lose potential access to that scheme for a full year in their last year in primary school. So again, happy to hear members' views on this. We have already got correspondence in with the Minister around other issues related to UK government policy around childcare in particular, and I would suggest that we should also share this with the Minister and I would like to get an update, if members are agreed, on any engagement he has had with HMRC or Treasury on this issue, as it does seem there's a massive gap there that is potentially going to impact a lot of families in Northern Ireland. And I'm happy to take advice, but if the committee can write directly to the HMRC or indeed to the Chancellor, I think we should do so. This seems a real inequity in the system and we should be flagging it. Are we agreed, or any views? Michelle, you want to come in?
Agreed. There's the tax-free childcare, but yes, but also the effect this has on people's eligibility for the childcare subsidy scheme, and I wonder if the Minister might be able to act on that locally, even without this happening. We could ask that as well.
If we could get clarity on that, absolutely. I hadn't picked up on that aspect of it. If there's potentially a local intervention on the subsidy scheme that could help with that, so I think we have agreement on that, so if we can get correspondence away on that, and obviously to update the individual in question as well. Item 8.9 on page 372, submission from the Women's Policy Group NI on the proposed committee bill on the right for pupils to wear trousers in school. Are we content to add those to the bill papers? We agreed? Right. Item 8.10, page 378, correspondence from the Caleb's Cause campaign, and it provides some details around the sort of issues that parents have to navigate in terms of preparing for their child leaving the education system. I would suggest that we note those papers again for our SEN inquiry. I think transitions are likely to be an area where we have recommendations coming out from that, and I would think we should note those. Any other actions arising from that? Great. Item 8.11, page 382, it's correspondence from Belfast Works Connect, providing a briefing paper on the local growth fund sustaining place-based support. I would propose we note if members are agreed. Agreed. Item 8.12, page 389, correspondence from the Committee for Finance on the Spring Supplementary Estimates, Vote on Account and Budget Bill 2026. Obviously that has all passed through the Assembly this week, so I would propose that we note. Are we agreed? Item 8.14, page 650, it's a submission from Belfast City Youth Council on the proposed committee bill on the right to wear trousers in school. Are members content to add this to the bill papers, and also if that group, as they seem to have a real interest in engaging with committee, aren't on our stakeholder list, to be added to it?
Yeah, and I think the CLC youth panel that Rachel referred to last week as well.
Great, so that can be taken forward then if members are agreed. Okay. Item 8.15, page 651, it's correspondence from the Committee for Finance on the Department of Education's 5-year budget strategy. It's really just clarifying the status of that document. I think there are other budget plans that are meant to be submitted to Finance, and they were just clear that these are two different things, but other than that, are members content to note? Great. Item 8.16, page 692, is correspondence from the Department for Education providing the report on its consultation on the future of SIA, GCSE, AS and A-level qualifications. So this is quite a significant document, and we obviously had evidence from the department on their proposals in this space. I think what the consultation report highlights is there are clear issues coming through from teachers, parents and pupils on a range of these proposals. the proposed changes to AS levels being removed, and on some of the changes around moving from a modular to linear approach. Removal of controlled assessments does seem to be causing some significant concern among respondents. I would be concerned that the commentary from the department in the report does suggest that decisions have been largely taken on this, and I hope that's not the case. But I think we really do need a pause to seriously reflect on these proposals. And like the Deputy Chair's already highlighted this, we are dealing with issues in the education system at the moment of just a very, very rapid pace of reform. And I think this is an area where, my sense when you get a feedback like this, it's time to reflect rather than to press ahead. So we'd want to propose that we write to the department, or indeed to the Minister, seek an update on their next steps, and to just note some of those concerns around really pressing ahead with reforms where there doesn't seem to be universal agreement or support for them. Any other views, Dana, you'd like to come in?
I think this, particularly the removal of AS, was as clear as a nose in my face that was not going to be popular, because it's not the right move. And I think the Minister admitted that himself within his own family circle, that was being expressed to him by the young people in his life. I hope they put their listening caps on here and thinking caps, because this is very, very clear. And if they were to push on through it, they're sending a really bad message out there that they're just going to bully their way through on a curriculum change that no one's wanting at all. Never mind the chaos that we talked about earlier on with the level of consultations they're going forward. This is evidence right there in front of them, and they need to have listening mode.
Thank you, Danny. Any other contributions? Are we agreed to seek some clarity on the department's intentions and to express that concern around pressing ahead with changes based on that feedback? It may be based on the response we get officials back on this, because this is really practical day-to-day stuff for students. It really, really impacts them. So, we do need to make sure we keep some attention on this.
Can I make one more wee point?
Sure.
Because it was actually brought up to me in the youth circles I was in, because they had watched back on the committee around that time, and AI was being flagged up as a real concern around coursework, and the young people were feeding back to me saying, oh, how unfair that is, because I'm sure they use AI, and that does that be comparable, though you won't take away our approach to education, but you won't take it away for you. You'll use it. It's a good model for use, but not for us. Yeah. It's just something they need to be very conscious of.
The comparison is just nonsense. I mean, teachers who have developed skills over time, got qualifications in an era where there wasn't, largely when there wasn't AI, have developed critical skills that enable them to teach and so on, or in professional careers. The fear of AI is not, if you're a young person or you're even a student in a degree, of course you're going to use whatever is available to you to use AI. Just so we can develop this point, in order to, anything that's going to assist you to do something easier and to get a better grade, people are going to take advantage of. That's human nature. What drives the fear of me around AI isn't that they're going to be in a modern world and be able to use that in their future careers. That's great if it helps us all, super. But it's about the development of critical skills of young people, and that they fail to develop those skills if they're not put in a position where they have to write that essay themselves, they have to do that work themselves.
I think you misunderstood. So that is what the young people were saying. Yes. It's that comparable. It should not be nonsense. We need to listen to them.
No, it's an example.
They're not. Well, it's not that they're going to use it. It's a fact that coursework could possibly be taken away from them because of AI. That's almost like an accusation to them.
It's a perfect example, and it may well be, but it's a perfect example, in my opinion, Danny, of the unhealthiness, I think, in some of the drive that has been part of the committee in terms of putting young people right at the very centre, or lifting the voices to equal to experts and so on in terms of their educational experience. Because young people, of course, we should listen to them, we should gain insight from them, but they will take choices that suit them at a particular time without being able to have the ability of hindsight to look back. And I'm glad at the time when I was at school, I had the ability to develop critical skills without something like AI. Because if I had done all of my work through AI, it might have been easier, I might have got the grades that I wanted, but I wouldn't have developed those skills.
Sorry, if I could just maybe come in for a short response from Danny. I'm not sure we're going to sort out the role of AI in education in this conversation. conversation is probably just whether or not
Big issue.
they agreed. Of course it is, but I mean on this particular item we're not going to resolve it. So I'll let Danny respond, and then we'll draw that to a
The
close.
point I was trying to make was,
And I'll bring Karen.
it's not evidence based. It was just said by the officials that, oh, really course restriction because of AI. It was just dropped in. The young people watched that, and it's not nonsense what they're saying. What they're saying is coursework's really important. It helps them with getting their grades. Some people aren't as strong at doing a test and they're good at doing coursework. Doesn't mean that they're going to cheat, and they feel like they're just being spoken down to. And it's almost back to that time of children should be seen and not heard. It's not right. I'm going to be honest here. I really don't care what some of the officials say because they aren't the experts. They aren't. Because anything I've heard from them this last year has been a lot of nonsense and some stuff. So I'm not calling them experts.
Well, draw
well
a
paid.
line. I'm keen to bring Karen in because I think you were looking to make a declaration of
Thank
interest.
you, Chair. We're talking about AI and ethics in education, so I have to make a declaration of interest as I sit on the AI ethics board outside of my role as an MLA. But I just wanted to note as well, I met with the student union in Coleraine at Ulster Uni on, I think it was Friday, and they had said for some students, they're not using AI, but the system, I think it's like turnitin.com, is flagging it as being AI, and there's a complexity there about people being wrongfully accused as well. So just to note that, and students are experiencing this time and time again.
Yeah, look, if I can just sort of land it.
Can I make one small point?
You certainly can.
I think the point Danny was making was that officials are using the possibility of young people using AI as a reason or an excuse for getting rid of AS levels. And I mean, it's not going to be long until AI can tell whether essays and assignments have been written by AI or written by an individual. So in my view, it's not a good reason or excuse for doing away with AS levels, and that's, you know.
Speaking to the point raised by Karen, and what Pat said, speaking off record, actually at one of the stakeholder events we've had at the representatives of universities, I mean, they were very clear that it's very, very challenging. It's not like traditional Turnitin plagiarism and so on. Like, they're finding it very difficult. I think we had that instance in our own chamber when Matthew O'Toole raised it around the minister, and it was found that actually the way in which it was done doesn't necessarily accurately reflect how a speech is been done by AI or not. You know, people are changing how they speak, because I mean, I no longer get up and say I rise to speak on, because people identify that as being AI, despite the fact I used it before, you know, ChatGPT was out there. So
you created it.
Yeah. Well, no, I didn't create it, but I clearly
owned it. Well,
yeah, but you know, it's certainly more challenging to spot for academic institutions probably than I'm sure they're telling the students, be careful, we can spot this, because certainly in plagiarism they terrified people in the past, but they're finding challenges in that regard.
I've spoken to lecturers who are quite clear that some of the assignments they are getting from students have been done by AI. Yeah. They know the students aren't capable of writing a particular essay in that way, but my argument is it's not going to be long until an essay can be scanned and AI will be able to say whether it is or isn't AI composed.
It's not a dig at Sinn Féin at all, but if you look at the TD Cathy Bennett mentioned Bluetooth instead of Blue Tongue. So I actually think it's affecting every stratosphere, that we have to grip this in some shape or form, and it starts at school, because it's impacting critical thinking.
So the main takeaway is that the impact of AI in education is an area we have not explored in enough detail at committee.
How much time have we got, Chair?
Don't think we're going to have time to run a full evidence session on it at this stage. Maybe an inquiry, David, you can propose that. Look, what I would say is I think it is clear that it is an issue, and I don't think we should downplay the fact that it creates challenges for teachers in terms of managing work that's being submitted, whether or not that therefore means you overhaul your entire qualification system to reflect it. I suppose that's where the dispute comes in, but I think we do have agreement that we can write to the department to seek clarity on their intentions in relation to the outworkings of the consultation report. So item 8.17, page 754, it's a response from the Department of Education providing additional information that was requested by the committee on the SEND delivery plan. So certainly want to propose we add this to the inquiry papers. And I just wanted to note more than anything else that very, very stark confirmation that there is effectively no data on reduced timetables, none that they have, and that seems quite clear. And I think if we're in the space of thinking about recommendations in our inquiry, I think addressing that data gap very seriously and intentionally, particularly around pupils with SEN, is something we should be thinking about. But other than that, is there anything else anyone wants to add to that, other than to the inquiry papers? No? Great. Item 8.18, page 757, response from the EA, some information on parental support classes, just flagging it as members had sought that detail, so really just to note and to add to this inquiry papers if we're agreed. Item 8.19, page 760, response from the Department of Education on air quality in schools. The committee had written to ask for some information. So I would first of all suggest we share that with the individual who had raised that with committee, if that's agreed. But I did note, and maybe just to clarify this through the clerk, the correspondence that had been proposed, I think, had asked about details of engagement with local authorities in GB who'd taken steps to run schemes around air quality and how cleaning it could link to the attendance strategy, but I'm not sure we got an answer to any of those questions. I'm not sure if we can check what was specifically asked for in the original, and if there was maybe a gap in what was asked for, because I appreciate these things are often picked up right at the close of meetings, but I would be keen to just get a sense of what the departments do. I'm not asking them to spend money, but I'm asking to maybe look at the evidence of what can be done, and I think the attendance strategy, it is relevant if members are agreed. Agreed. And then same vein, item 8.21, page 770, it's an invitation to the Clean Air in Schools Leaders Making It Happen webinar. Again, I think it's from the same individual who had contacted committee, so just to note that for diaries if we're agreed. Item 8.22, page 771, it's a response from the Children's Law Centre regarding the Minister's response to committee on transgender guidance. Now, I know we had a bit of a discussion around this in the similar response that came through from the Children's Commissioner last week. I would just note the Law Centre are quite clear they don't consider the guidance representing a legal or reliable basis for schools to make decisions, which I think was quite stark in terms of how it was set out. And they also used the phrase that the policy change does not represent guidance. It is simply a policy change. So,
I mean, I was astounded when I read that.
It's very stark.
And I'm just wondering, do we have the wherewithal to forward that document to all schools?
I was certainly going to suggest that we shared it with the Minister to seek his response to their assessment of his policy, but I mean, through the clerk, do we have that wherewithal? I'm not sure if we do.
There is a C2K system, but we haven't used it really to reach out to schools. In the last mandate, I think schools were surveyed about academic selection, is that right? Via C2K, but we haven't used it. Do you want to get a response from the Minister first, or?
I mean, just in terms of, it's not necessarily something I'll agree with, but the Children's Law Centre themselves have given this to us. Surely the right thing to do is, I mean, I'm sure they're following this meeting. If they wish to circulate around schools, it's their prerogative to do that rather than ours. I think certainly in the first instance, give them the ability to do that. I would suggest.
Sorry, my proposal was going to be...
Schools should take the direction from the department, not from Children's Law Centre.
My suggestion was going to be to get a response from the Minister on the Children's Law Centre letter, and perhaps we could review it at that stage. I don't know if there's agreement around that.
Yeah, I'll go along with that.
Okay, so we're agreed. We'll share it with the Minister and seek a response.
But certainly, if we don't get a satisfactory response from the Minister, I would be seeking to... I suppose first of all we'd have to ask the Children's Law Centre if they were agreed to the committee circulating this to schools, or whether they would want to do it themselves.
And we can maybe seek that clarity now. I mean, because one of the things which I think I understand where you're coming from on this, it does state some risks around schools being exposed to legal challenge in this space. So I think that is important to note. Okay, so we're agreed. Item 8.23, page 10 of tabled papers. And John, this is to your question earlier, correspondence from the Department of Education providing an updated copy of the school uniforms guidelines. So that's to note, and obviously we can pick any issues up arising from that in due course. Item 8.24, page 32 of tabled papers. It's correspondence from an individual regarding concerns about the increase in music tuition fees, and it was really about that being backdated to January 2026. So I would want to suggest that we share that with the EA, really to establish just the points that he's querying, why limited notice was provided to parents, why a longer lead-in time wasn't given to parents who may have committed to that service for a full academic year without knowledge that a price rise could be coming. I think it would be appropriate to get that clarity for the individual. Are we agreed? Agreed. And other than that, apologies, there was quite a lot of correspondence to work through there. Are members content to dispose of the correspondence as per the summary note at page 329? Is that agreed? Agreed. Okay. Item 9 then is the forward work programme. So we obviously have had some changes coming through with the SEN inquiry and the department's changes. Do you want to speak to that in the first instance, Clark?
Yeah, there haven't been very many changes really. I've just programmed a couple of dates when I anticipate that we might have private members' bill work to begin to look at. And yeah, other than that, I need to reschedule the session today. If members are in agreement, the officials who were going to do today's session and next week's have asked that it be merged into one transformation project briefing.
With that, in terms of the fact that it's delaying sort of bringing the inquiry to a conclusion, I'm content with that if everyone's agreed. Agreed.
Yeah, so I guess they'll have to let me know when their process is finished and they're able to do that. Thank you.
Okay, no, that's great, thank you. I just wanted to flag one issue, and it's really, again, very conscious that we do have some free slots, but also we've a fair bit of legislative work coming down the track. I did just note the announcement today around the Minister brought forward, I think he's stating his intention around making a written ministerial statement around integrated education and the transformation guidance on that. I think it would be good to hear from the department on that, especially as the Minister's bringing a written statement forward and we're not getting the opportunity to ask questions in the chamber on that. So I would be keen to hear from the department on that revised guidance and potentially from any stakeholders. I would certainly suggest NICE and IEF may be interested in briefing on that if there's agreement on that.
That is actually in table papers, the
Oh, so it is.
Statement after all, yeah.
It's in table papers.
I thought we hadn't because it come in so late on.
No. You were ahead of it and had it in there. So yeah, apologies. I maybe should have picked it up at correspondence. So if we're agreed, we can schedule that coming forward then. Okay. Anything else in forward work programme before we move on?
Just say I'll maybe wait on the other answers coming back, but I may at some stage raise something around
dietary stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Deputy
Chair.
Chair.
Have an informal on that?
Yeah, I'll wait to see what comes back in terms of the information and have a chat and come back maybe next week with.
We've got Lucy Crehan and Christine Counselling for the 11th. Is that still on?
Yeah, there's been.
Yeah. Okay.
That's great. Okay, so are we content to endorse the forward work programme with those amendments? Yep. Great. Okay, item 10, any other business? Is there any other, David?
Just, I probably should have mentioned when we were closed earlier, but it doesn't, just a flag, a full right flag with you. We discussed last week around the independent schools, and I had a chat with someone who's involved with them. I suspect we probably will get correspondence at some stage, because they do think it'll have an effect on them, and they may seek an opt-out in that regard, but that will come formally, obviously, but that's my understanding, so just put on the committee's...
Update on that, yeah, and potentially that's something to flag through legal services. We might need some further advice on that, should that come through.
We have a letter, it'll be in the pack next week.
Okay, so there'll be a letter in the pack on that. So that's around the committee bill and the potential interaction with independent schools and the scope of the bill. So we can cover that in a future evidence session or next week in correspondence. So that takes us on then to item 11, date, time and place of next meeting. So the next committee meeting is scheduled for Wednesday the 4th of March 2026 at 2 p.m. in room 29 and online. And just leaves me to put the question if the committee meeting does now adjourn. Are we agreed? Agreed.
Committee Room 29. Sound. Committee Room 29. Sound. Committee Room 29. Sound. Committee Room 29. Sound. Committee Room 29, 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 Sound.